All right. Hello and welcome everyone to Celestial Theodolite update number 21. Tonight we're going to take a little break from the normal spreadsheet, stuff like that. We're going to do an open Q&A, but before we get into the open Q&A section, we're going to watch a video. I came across a video today called How to Destroy Anyone in an Argument. And this guy goes over the like a bad faith playbook tactics of how to argue when you don't have a point so that no conclusion can be drawn, because the most significant way to obfuscate a point if you don't have a counterpoint is to make it appear as if there's no point at all. And I noticed a lot of parallels in the argumentation and tactics that were put forward in this guy's presentation, in how that we are in. And the parallel was related to the arguments and quote unquote refutations that we get to the Celestial Theodolite. Because the thing is, guys, is like, I feel like a lot of people are waiting for someone to be like someone on the globe side to be like, oh, shoot, you know what? They're right. That's never going to happen. I've had some other experiences regarding like something completely unrelated to the shape, like the speed of light, and whether or not it's variant. And the person would straight up be like, no, it's always the same. Even this measurement that implies a variance in the speed somehow implies that there's no variance. So you really have to understand things yourselves, to stand on them. But so we're going to take a look at some tactics here to understand what's been going on. So I'll play the video here and get the screen share going.
Oh, whoops.
I got you.
Sure.
All right, here we go. This is the YouTube channel Unsolicited Advice. Shout out to your boy. I'll link it in the chat here. And you guys could check it out on your own time later or something. But yeah, extremely important, because the arguments here parallel everything that we encounter in dealing with conversation where there's should be a conclusion, yet no conclusion is miraculously never drawn. So how do we get here? Let's take a look.
Throughout history, most philosophers have cared about a few key things: truth, logic, and open inquiry. But they have failed to provide what we really want to know. How do we dominate our opponents in a debate, making them look like a fool and us really, really clever? For that matter, how do we do this even if they are right and we are wrong? After all, truth can be dry, boring, and involve tedious, complex reasoning steps. Whereas destroying someone in an argument is deeply exciting and will make everyone look at us and go, what a smart and handsome man, I wish my boyfriend were like him, before giving us a kiss on the lips and telling us how irresistibly attractive we are because of our humongous, swollen brains. Well, luckily, Schopenhauer has got your back. In his brilliantly sarcastic essay On the Art of Being Right, he outlines exactly how you can use a myriad of underhanded and logically spurious techniques in order to gain the upper hand in any argument, even if you don't have a leg to stand on. And as you watch this video, you'll notice you don't have to go very far to see these models in action. Littered across the internet are these brave warriors of sophistry. Simply choose your preferred guru and let them guide you into the wonderful world of argumentative performance, using Schopenhauer's handbook as your definitive text. Get ready to learn how politicians can convince you of something that you know is false, why logic barely matters in most debates, and so much more. So throw out your old dusty critical thinking books and let's learn how to destroy people with facts and logic without using either. 1. So what you're saying is, the trouble with lots of debates is there's often more than one reasonable perspective on an issue. And this is a massive hurdle. People start to think that your opponent's position is plausible or even just understandable. Then there is every chance they will start to listen to them. And we can't have that. Listening might lead to comprehension, which might lead to persuasion. At this point, the debate is lost and our ego is tossed in the bin. Fortunately, Schopenhauer says that we can nip this nascent threat in the bud through the careful use of exaggeration. Every time your opponent puts forward a position, simply say, so what you're saying is, and then fill in the blank with the most outlandish interpretation of their words you can possibly imagine. So if I were to argue that freedom of speech is a good general principle in any liberal society, you can respond by saying, oh, Oh, so you think we should be able to shout bomb in a crowded airport? That is ridiculous. You can clearly see the move being made here. We have taken my statement that freedom of speech should be highly valued and reinterpreted free speech to mean a total lack of restrictions on any speech, rather than leaving room for a more moderate position that would admit of certain caveats. There are a number of ways you can achieve this exaggeration. You can pretend that in affirming a particular case of something, your opponent has actually agreed to a much more general principle. So in the above example, I could put on my best faux outraged face and say, well, I never. This guy wants to control what people can say and do. When actually their argument simply points out that in the particular case of yelling bomb at an airport, we might want to make an exception to the general rule of not policing speech. We can also interpret every use of a word with some inherent vagueness in the most bizarre and ridiculous way possible. So if they say bad, we will pretend they have said equivalence to the devil himself. And if they say good, we will interpret that as completely beyond reproach, as if it is the wellspring of morality. This ensures that their true point will be completely obscured with only an implausible straw man left in its place. And that sets us up perfectly for our next move. If you want to help me make more videos like this, then please consider subscribing to either my channel, my email list, or my Patreon. The links are in the description. 2. What I'm saying is, to continue our misrepresentative gambit, we can bolster our own arguments by essentially splitting them in two. We will have one very careful, circumspect, rational, and almost truistic position, and another one which is much looser, but can also do a lot more for us. Whenever we're not being actively criticized, we can assert the looser position and then retreat back into our stronger one if anyone raises an objection. If I wanted to argue for the abolition of puppies, I would start by saying something really sensible, like certain types of large dog can be very dangerous. Then, when my opponent has taken their eye off the ball, I can start talking about banning puppies more openly. But when they regain focus and point out that my position is ridiculous, I can say, "Pwah, get a load of this guy. He doesn't think that dogs can be dangerous." This is known as a Mott and Bailey argument, or a Mott and Bailey fallacy if you're talking to someone who cares about logical principles. It is perfect when you want to smuggle in a position without anyone noticing the sleight of hand maneuver going on. If you're really good at this, then you can convince people of whatever you like, framing the entire discussion as if it follows from an obvious truism. Eventually, people may become so confused that they'll start to think your extreme suggestions are simple entailments of your more minimal position. So someone will hear certain types of dog are dangerous and immediately think this means we have to eliminate all puppies without stopping to consider whether that actually follows from their original statement. The ideas will become associatively welded to one another. This means we'll be able to bypass the logical, reasonable part of someone's mind and get great to the good stuff, the stuff that is more willing to hang on our every word unthinkingly. If you use this strategy and the previous one together successfully, it becomes basically impossible to lose an argument. As far as your viewers or listeners or audience is concerned, you are a very reasonable person holding a perfectly obvious position, whereas your opponent is making some plainly ridiculous claim they cannot possibly defend. It's a way of poisoning the well before you even really get started. Anyone watching will begin from the position that you are probably right, and then you just have to lampoon the straw version of your opponent's argument that you've constructed to hammer home the message. It basically does itself. But of course, we're just getting started. Now we have to move on to the business of active argumentation and how to come out on top, even when you really shouldn't. 3. The endless assault of questions. In another one of my videos, we went through the careful way that Socratic questioning can be used to clarify what someone says in a discussion, and how it can facilitate good faith argumentation, where both you and your interlocutor can come to a mutual understanding of one another's points in order to learn something new and hopefully get closer to the truth. But who cares about that? Now we must forget Socrates and employ questions in an entirely different way. One that aims to baffle and confuse, rather than illuminate. We must keep our opponents constantly on their toes with questions that are either irrelevant to their overall point or simply lead them in the direction we want them to go. So, if you're representing the pro-puppy league and I am still on my puppy annihilation campaign, I might send a merciless barrage of questions your way. They might range from ones that imply something is nebulously untoward about your character. Why is it exactly that you have such a perverse affection for canines, Mr. Jones? To ones that are evidently loaded. So how do you account for the fact that dogs have consistently been used as weapons of war throughout history? To ones that are simply beside the point. Is it not true, Mr. Jones, that you were recently seen in the company of not dogs, but cats? Our aim here is not to use questions to understand, but to undermine. Even the most intelligent people can be reduced to stuttering and silence if you throw enough varied inquisitions at them in quick succession. You're essentially forcing their minds to continuously jump from issue to issue, never letting them rest long enough so that they can form a coherent thought. It goes without saying that we should only pay attention to the answers of these questions when it suits us. So if they give a perfectly sensible response, we should just ignore them, refusing to even acknowledge it. But obviously, if they slip up, giving an answer that seems unsatisfactory or is confusing or contradicts something they said earlier in the debate, even slightly, then we can pounce upon that. We triumphantly cry, "Upon closer inspection, your whole position falls apart." For the rest of the encounter, we should not let them forget this, coming back to it whenever we get the sense they're a bit too comfortable. Best of all would be if we get them to make a series of flawed or confusing or contradictory answers in quick succession, as this is sure to provoke a laugh from anyone watching. This is all to give the impression that your opponent does not even know what they are talking about, despite the fact they might be very knowledgeable. Some of the best types of questions to provoke this sort of reply are ones that contain within them a presupposition that the debater does not agree with. So I could ask, but given that puppies are evil, why shouldn't we get rid of them? Then, not only does the speaker have to answer the question, they are also bound to want to dispel this presupposition, or else they'll be seen as implicitly endorsing it. And of course, my opponents would not want to concede the idea that puppies are evil. However, to anyone watching, it just looks like someone's giving a long, convoluted response to a downright simple question. This would leave the impression that we are a superior intellect, easily able to trip our opponents up with elementary questions about puppies. Of course, this is even easier if you prime your audience to feel like you must be fundamentally in the right. And this is where Schopenhauer's next observation enters the arena. 4. Control the metaphors. A lot of us like to go around pretending that we are very rational. But in recent years, we've started to discover just how many extra-logical factors influence our judgments and decisions. And just one of these is the power that framing, metaphors, and labels have on our thoughts. For instance, if the losses in a situation are emphasized more than the gains, then it makes people more risk-averse, even if the actual facts have not changed at all. But this cognitive bias presents a gleeful opportunity for the unscrupulous debater who cares nothing for truth and simply wants victory. The prospect of controlling the frame of the discussion. This can be done in a number of ways. First, we give our position a name that is packed as full as possible with positive connotations. So we won't call our worldview puppy nihilism, but instead something like mauling protectionism. And this will stretch to the metaphors we use. We won't paint ourselves as joyously arguing for the annihilation of innocent puppies, but instead we'll emphasize all of the protective elements of our position. We will express real sympathy for the puppies. We don't want to hurt them, we'll say. We just recognize that this is a sad necessity of protecting people from harmful guard dogs. We will proclaim that those who oppose us are not doing so out of some affection for puppies. They just don't have the guts to do what must be done. We won't call them puppy lovers, but instead something more nefarious like puppy fanatics or the puppy league. Of course, the particular context will dictate which metaphors it makes sense to use. If we want to appeal to those who consider themselves supremely rational, then we will emphasize the hysterical nature of caring so deeply about puppies. We'll use terms like puppy worshippers and pupsteria. If we want to make it seem like our opponents are out of touch, then we can talk about those fortunate enough to have the time to care about puppies. If we want people to view our opponents as just evil, then we can emphasize what we say are the downsides of puppies and then say that they actively support that. Then the puppy supporter becomes a mauling enthusiast or a dog poo lover. The possibilities stretch as far as your logical conscience is willing to accommodate. And this does not just end at controlling the terms used in a debate. It can stretch to the way that we talk about the power dynamics at play. In one situation, we can argue that we're only saying what everyone else is thinking, and it's only because the powers that be prevent it that people aren't speaking out more against puppies. Alternatively, if we want to appeal to people that consider themselves intelligent and moderate, then we can say that really this is the position of the thinking man. We are the few who are enlightened enough to stand up for killing puppies when most are still dreaming of unrealistic scenarios of humans and puppies living in harmony. But you and I, we've thought about it. We know the truth. We could also associate the puppies or their supporters with a group of people maligned by our audience, which in different scenarios might be the rich or the poor or certain foreign nations. As I said, the possibilities are endless. None of this directly argues for our position or adds a single logical reason to believe in it, because it doesn't have to. It's playing on people's identities. Very few people want to be seen as hysterical or unthinking, so the more we keep implying that our opponents must be like that, the less people want to take up the cause of the puppies. We're then controlling not just the debate, but the way the debate is perceived. If we are able to frame the whole issue in our favour, either by presenting ourselves as the sensible voice of reason fending off some fringe lunatics, or as a small independent group of brave truth-tellers revealing hidden secrets, then a great many people who don't know anything about the questions involved will probably accept this presentation and think, ah, well, the anti-maulers do seem to be the rational ones here. And they'll be much more likely to unthinkingly parrot our position. When done skillfully, this is a proper masterstroke for the manipulative debater, as it allows them to pre-weight this discussion and any further discussions in their favour, which is quickly becoming a consistent theme of the video. And in a similar vein, we'll now move on to a devious type of trap to lay for our unsuspecting opponent, one that can actually turn their superior knowledge against them. 5. The strength of common sense. How many times have you heard someone defend a position by saying, well, it's just common sense, isn't it? Of course, strictly speaking, this doesn't support anything. Common sense is a pretty fallible way of establishing whether something is correct. If we had clung desperately to our common sense since 3000 BC, then we would arguably still believe that the sun god Ra fought monsters over the course of the night to ensure that he rose again the next morning. After all, how else would the sun keep coming back? It's just common sense. This is where Schopenhauer's next dastardly play comes in. He points out that one of the best ways to make an informed opponent seem foolish is to say something wrong, but that appears to be common sense, and then let them try and refute it, probably using some long explanation that draws on their particular expertise. You can imagine this happening in a historical debate about geocentrism, the belief that the Earth is the center of the universe and everything else orbits it. At least in theory, the geocentrist could say, look, we seem to stay still, don't we? And the sun seems to move. No doubt a crowd of non-astronomers 16th century onlookers would be pretty satisfied with this line of reasoning. It appeals to common sense. Of course, the actual historical Renaissance position of geocentrism was much more sophisticated than this. I don't want to misrepresent that. After this, Copernicus has to take the stand and carefully explain that there are actually subtle contradictions in the best geocentric models of the solar system, and that if you move to a more complex heliocentric model, then this clears some of them up. Then, a century later, Kepler would have to interject and say that our best heliocentric models actually make slightly more accurate predictions of planetary movements than our best geocentric ones. Sure, they are technically, correct, but the very length of their explanation would probably cause many listeners to go, look how hard they have to work to deny the basic facts of the matter. The sun revolves around the Earth. Get over it. It's just common sense. This reflects the observations of behavioral economist Daniel Kahneman, that we often prefer a simple explanation to one that is complicated, but ultimately closer to the truth. It is often a much better way of managing our mental resources. If reality is too complex to understand at a glance, then unless the issue is of life-changing import, we may as well just move on in ignorance. But for the dishonest debater, this opens up a great opportunity to get the upper hand by making sure their position is not necessarily correct, but definitely seems simpler than their opponents. This will allow that ever-helpful common sense advantage to kick in, and you'll have an inherent head start in any confrontation with someone arguing something more complicated. And the great thing about your opponent embarking on a lengthy explanation of a complex point is that you can do the following to great effect. 6. Interrupt. Imagine that I'm giving an in-depth presentation of quite a delicate argument. Perhaps I am arguing that despite Gödel's second incompleteness theorem, there are still multiple helpful uses for second-order logic. This would take quite a long time and require several reasoning steps that some people might question, especially if they're not presented in a sufficiently nuanced way. So what would make turning this difficult task into a near impossible one? Well, interrupting me every few seconds would probably do the trick. Then I would lose my place multiple times and be much more likely to put something clumsily, allowing for my points to become confused or garbled. Then I will leave the impression on anyone present that I'm not confident in my argument, or that I do not sufficiently understand it. It will seem like you are showing me up as you forensically analyze my argument in real time as I'm giving it. Of course, in reality, all you're doing is not letting me get a word in edgeways, but that's besides the point. As I said at the beginning, we are not concerned with good faith, truth, logic, or validity. We are concerned with winning, dominating, and destruction. And for all its philosophical flaws, this strategy can leave the strong impression of victory. This interruption tactic is especially important to do if your opponent looks like they have an argument that will actually end up refuting your position. Then you are in a race to interrupt them before they can reach their dreaded QED. You see this an awful lot in interview programs. In an effort to catch out their subject, the interviewer will refuse to let them finish their point, and instead insist on taking issue with every step of the argument as it progresses. I think people are luckily starting to see through this trick more often, but it's still incredibly common. And if you plan to be a disingenuous arguer, it is an invaluable tool in your arsenal. And it might also have the rather nifty side effect. 7. Make your opponent angry. The trouble with calm people is that a lot of the time they're pretty reasonable. They are often able to formulate their arguments both intelligently and convincingly. And this is really annoying if your overall goal is just to trick people into agreeing with you. So, if our opponent is on the verge of making some sense, we must nip that in the bud immediately by making them as angry as humanly possible. When someone is angry, it's much harder for them to refute your arguments point by point. They are much more likely to drift off topic or become incoherent or just make a fool of themselves. At this point, you can pretty much ignore anything they've said so far and simply point at them and say, "Goodness me, how can I be expected to debate with such a person?" After the discussion, people will be talking about how calm and collected you were in the face of this clearly unhinged adversary, despite the fact that you set out to get under their skin in the first place. Of course, how you make this person angry is contextual and also entirely up to you. You might launch a series of unjustified ad hominem attacks and hope that they take the bait. Maybe your constant interruptions will be sufficient to make them snap. Perhaps you can just speak in a supremely derisive tone of voice, condescension dripping from your every passing word until they find your very presence insulting. I'll leave you to work out the details, but the main objective is to be a complete wind-up merchant. Once your opponent is frothing at the mouth, they'll be unable to challenge your position, meaning that you win by default. Sure, we've missed out on the potential to have our views challenged and made someone look like an idiot for no reason, but we won, and that's the important thing. Then again, what's the point in winning if we don't get across the further idea that we are beings of unparalleled intellect? Brain box titans straddling the channel through which lesser minds paddle in their silly little boats. Well, luckily, our next point should clear this up nicely. 8. Toss a word salad. Now we have come, my most amorous and treasured squabbler, to the juncture at which we commence the audacious explorations of the isle's most thesaurine. We must pluck the loquacious fruits from the evergreen tree at the midmost yard of the garden of faux eloquence. We shall conquer the monosyllabic, dispense with the comprehensible, and retreat into the safe refuge of near unintelligibility. Or, to quote W.C. Fields, if you can't dazzle them with brilliance, then baffle them with bullshit. But in this case, we must carefully construct our bullshit, dress it up in the finery of academic language and technical terminology, so that to the uninformed observer it looks like a colossus of intellectual capability. But on closer inspection, it's just a shop mannequin in a cheap powdered wig. This is a way of achieving the aesthetics and authority of intellectualism without having to do any of that messy thinking or learning. To the untrained eye, we will appear exactly like any other incredibly clever person. After all, we've got the lingo down, we hold ourselves with authority, we speak with assured confidence. At first glance, anyone would take us to be an expert on whatever we are speculating about. According to his memoir, the reformed conman Frank Abagnale Jr. was able to pass as a pilot, a doctor, and even an FBI agent, simply by means of his own unflappability and by dressing the part. And these identities are all much easier to disprove than a nebulous claim of expertise or authority, so we'll probably have a much easier time than Frank did. Of course, there will always be some people who see through the disguise, but they will be drowned out by the sheer number of onlookers starstruck by your extensive vocabulary and nice tweed jacket. Someone can even fall into this trope without realizing it. One of the reasons I say pretty much once every video that I am not some grand authority and that you should draw your own conclusions is that the mixture of my posh accent, eccentric demeanor, and way of writing might trick you into thinking that I am anything more than just some guy with a few books. And I would be eager to disabuse you of any such notion. But if you do want to put on the thrills and petticoats of the intelligentsia, employing helpful servings of word salad along the way, then it might just be your shortcut to winning an argument, even if you haven't done 5 minutes of research. But now, some final decorations on the cake. 9. Some miscellaneous pointers. Some of Schopenhauer's tips and tricks can't be neatly grouped together like I have done for previous sections. So, here's a selection of some of his greatest uncategorized hits. Consider using personal insults if you're backed into a corner. This will force your opponents to try to defend their character, which will then derail the discussion. If you refute someone's particular arguments, then claim that the conclusion of that argument is therefore false, disallowing them to have any further argument in its favor. If their position has never been tested, state that it's good in theory but just would not work in practice. If pressed, avoid elaborating why. If you have nothing to say to directly challenge your opponent, simply point to some general but irrelevant concern, like how everyone is wrong sometimes, or that nothing is certain. Conflate terms that have no business being conflated. Make your opponents choose between two extremes, obscuring any reasonable middle ground. Begin an argument with "everyone knows that," so that people understand where they should stand on the issue. If you're close to being defeated, just suddenly change the subject. Above all, if you want to be a successful dishonest arguer, you must learn how to never concede except on the most minor points. Anytime you are forced to give something up, simply pretend that you haven't later in the argument, and ignore what you said before. Each time it appears you've lost some dialectical territory, launch an immediate counterattack to reclaim it, or just assume it again when your opponent's not looking. Refuse to engage with the substance of your interlocutor's arguments, and employ every tactic of exaggeration, obfuscation, and distortion in your power to make them seem ridiculous. Nothing is off the table. No principle should hold you back from an ad hominem attack or a blatant misrepresentation. Cast logic out the window. It is no longer your master. Your only guiding light is the optics of what you're doing. How it will be seen by others, whether they'll think you have won the debate. Don't see conversation as a potential search for truth, but rather a competitive sparring match where the object is to humiliate rather than construct or communicate. And of course, don't admit to anyone that this is what you're doing. But say that we don't want to do any of this. Say we are exactly the kind of idealistic, truth-loving philosophers that a deceptive debater would treat with derision and scorn. What can we take away from Schopenhauer's biting satire on how discourse tends to function? 10. The lessons of deceit. Right, I'm going to remove my slightly sardonic, intensely sarcastic hat, and let's assume that what you and I are interested in is actually the truth. We ideally want good faith debate to proceed between two respectful and open-minded participants so that the truth can be converged upon provided we have all of the relevant information. Well, on the one hand, if you don't mind playing their game, it offers a series of rhetorical tricks you could use if you're ever confronted with an opponent who is clearly interested in stooping to that level. As Schopenhauer says, I think seriously. In the argumentative arena, in practice, it is not enough to merely be right. You must also be able to swat away all of the limbically persuasive but logically fallacious objections you will encounter. But even if you're not planning to dive into the wonderful and terrifying world of public debate, Schopenhauer's work is fantastic for inoculating us against the kind of argumentative moves people make that are merely sophistic tricks that distract us from the real issue at hand. It lets you know whether you're watching someone who genuinely wants to understand a topic or someone who just wants to appear right. Some anarchist philosophers interpret Machiavelli's The Prince as a warning about all the ways leaders can seize and maintain power that are deadly efficient but morally abhorrent. And I think we can view Schopenhauer's sarcastic essay in a similar way. It is showing us the tricks of the trade used by bad faith actors who care less about truth or logic and more about simply getting their idea shoved into your skull, and who are willing to use any means necessary to do so. And in our internet age where anyone can post any opinion on any topic, the skill of separating education from indoctrination is vital for staying sane. To paraphrase the opening pages of Schopenhauer's essay, the issue of objective truth is inexpedient if your only aim is to change someone's mind or to win at any cost. And you would be surprised at just how often people trade in honesty, logic, and consistency for a slim shot at glory. Of course, a much more important skill than knowing how to deceive someone into thinking that you're correct is how to actually critically analyze both someone else's views and your own. And click here to watch my video on that very topic. And stick around for more on thinking to improve your life.
Damn. What an excellent video.
That was fire.
Very reminiscent of a lot of the things
I love that.
that we deal with. And these types of tactics and ways to make sure that a conversation never reaches resolution is something that can happen on both sides, right? Like this isn't just mutually exclusive to people that believe that the earth is a globe or anything. Like I don't want to present that kind of narrative of it, but what these are just things to look out for when engaging in these conversations, and why they appear to go nowhere when there's, when XYZ has been introduced and then there's never any resolution. This is how it's been prevented. And then, recently going through 20 weeks of this, I saw a lot of this to an insane degree. So I couldn't make sense of why or how it was happening. And it was like, oh, well, there's a playbook of how to, like, this is how to ensure that there's no or, that nobody can understand anything. Like Shane calls it, how to muddy the waters, right? You just get wrapped up in endless nonsense that has nothing to do with the original point. So
Exaggeration, strawman, Mott and Bailey, endless questions, the controlling the metaphor, with like repeatedly appealing to common sense and oversimplified answers, constantly interrupt, and then provoking anger with tone, I think are my favorite points from that video.
The stars obviously go beneath the earth. Like, seriously, what are you talking about?
What?
No, it was just a joke.
That's awesome.
but yeah, there's the little introduction into that. So highly recommend this guy's channel. He's got a bunch of videos on logic and debate tactics. So you can learn how to better improve your line of argumentation, or how to be more aware of what tactics are being deployed conversationally when you're listening in. Because I know a lot of people are just background listening, just feeling it out, seeing what's going on. So these are some things you can kind of take note of to see where the arguments fall. Now,
what was this channel again?
it's called Unsolicited Advice. I put a link in the main chat there.
Yeah, I relinked it, and I also pinned it to the channel. So
Awesome.
Nice.
All right, so now we can get into open Q&A if anyone has any questions.
I don't have a question, Alan. I'm just gonna say I think you hit the nail on the head when you said XYZ. I think that in itself, by itself, holds its own weight. If people can understand that everything mathematically is based upon an XYZ, then there's no curve to that. Then I think that's just definitively the nail in the coffin overall.
Slight misinterpretation of what I said, but I appreciate the sentiment.
So what you're saying is,
I'm just saying the XYZ.
Right. Dude,
go from that.
pay close attention to when someone says, so what you're saying is, and if it's not even close to anything you said, like, give them like the benefit of the doubt on the first one, give them a little correction. But when they do it again and again and again, it never resembles anything close to what you said. It's not because they don't understand it. It's because they don't want people listening to understand it, which is alarming. Because then it's no
a
longer.
Fine line too.
Go ahead.
Oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
yeah.
I was pretty much done.
Well, I was just trying to jump in. I was excited because I was going to say it's a fine line between like a straw man or a steel man. Because if what you're saying, is this what you're saying? It could be a straw man. And it's like, no, it's not what I was saying at all. Or it could be an honest, good faith attempt at a steel man, So
instead of saying what you're saying, you say, what do you mean by blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it's between, are you asking clarifying questions or are you trying to muddy the water? As that guy said, you can employ the Socratic method both ways, right? Double-edged sword.
Yeah. And there's playbooks on this stuff.
Rhetoric and sophistry.
Yeah. Here, I'll post this one from this playbook.
Who are you asking permission?
And you're not going to use any of those tactics, right? That were just in the video. You're gonna.
Oh, what's up? Sorry. Jesse was. Oh, one second. Let me turn his volume up in a second here. So no, actually, we're not going to be engaging with Jesse anymore. So 2 weeks ago, when we were going over the math to the celestial theodolite, while we were talking about it on voice, he was in the text chat telling people that we wouldn't give him the math. We absolutely refused to. Mike and I both sent him PDFs with the math that we use. He's known the math the whole time. He's built spreadsheets on it. He's tells people that we're doing the math wrong. So you would obviously have to know the math if you're going to tell people it's wrong. So that's another one. And then on top of that, right, he starts live streaming notes. He's like asking me for the equations. I'm giving them to him on voice. He has the equations displayed on the screen while telling people that we're not giving him any equations. And then the following week, I released the, what was it called? The notation index guide. We went over all that, where I went over all the math exactly. All the equations that were in that were the equations that were on his screen that day. So this is no, I'm not dealing with that ever. That's so absurd. And I watched Witsit deal with it for years, trying to logically do it and show the contradictions and all that. There's no consequence to it. It just every week same thing. I'm not dealing with it. So no, you're not participating in the conversation. And on top of that, you were like, what was the other thing? with the ratio of refraction. And you've known about that the whole time, and you act like that refutes our position. It doesn't at all. When I go to tell everyone about that, suddenly you know what I'm talking about. Like, you feign ignorance. You do everything in that video to an insane degree, and there's no consequence to it. The only consequence is that I ban you from the conversation so that it can't be done anymore. I go over my position with John a couple weeks ago. He ends by saying, "That's a nice bunch of words," and then wants to reiterate his position in the middle of me talking, or trying to explain mine. Like, this whole thing is a put up. There's no explanation for why these stars are at a higher angle when they get occluded. And this has been completely overshadowed by endless nonsense. Like, all these tactics that were basically put in, or that were shown in this video, is what transpires every week.
Hey, Gio, are you gonna let him attack my character without letting me respond?
You can respond all you want. I have you muted. You're not going to be listening to anything said here. You can respond, and then after that, you're not going to be participating anymore.
Running more from Jesse or the Southern Hemisphere? I'm not sure which one.
Well, what you can do is you can go to right here. We can go to this live stream. We can go to, see, this one was that one. We can go here.
You gotta draw the line somewhere.
Was this the one we ended on? Yeah, I can't do this every week. It's insane. And he was like, what's your, what was the part? Let's see. I'll define which one it was. Second. Yeah, right here. And this one. So yeah, you could say which one, who we're running from the mostest is, but here's the video from a couple of weeks ago where we were going over the exact thing, and the tactic here was just to feign ignorance, act like we're not doing it right. It's just, I'm getting a different, all this stuff every week, same thing. So you guys can watch that or not. I don't care. I'm not going to be put in a position every week where a conclusion can't be drawn on purpose. That's insane.
Thank you for sharing, Jesse. Thank you for sharing.
Nice.
On a different, unrelated note, I do know that Mike has more detailed instructions for every star occlusion. Otherwise, people wouldn't be able to replicate it and add to the data set that has become the community event. But we welcome all people to, add community data. Take it upon yourself to add to the data by following the very easy to follow steps that we already put out.
Thank you for sharing, Jesse.
Thank you for sharing, Jesse.
Oh, is he just doing the thing where he's applying the wrong peak to the star, even though we have two other stars that occluded the peak? So when we reference that with the other measurements, it works out the exact same as the other ones that actually occluded it. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
I can't wait to endlessly do that so that there's no resolution again.
Well, no, so that's
Like,
actually
dude-
been resolved, but he's pretending he's doing that thing where he pretends it wasn't, and he just mentions it again and again and again as if there was no resolution, even though that was nicely concluded with the different peak, precisely the same prediction, and then we can just the next time he just pretends that that didn't happen. That's like tactic number 4 from the video. I'm sure he didn't watch.
Not to mention the peak
Tactic number
itself should
19
be
from the PDF.
the peak should have been under Earth curve too. Like none of it should even have been visible. So, you know, definitely a globe or whatever. Obfuscate from the actual point that the star was quote unquote below the celestial horizon, meaning that it would have been below the curvature of Earth, and it still didn't get occluded until it was within, I forget the, let me look it up real quick, within a couple arc minutes of the actual mountain. When you do the rise, when you do the rise, oh, I have him muted. I don't care at all. If he doesn't care about anything I've said the past 20 weeks, then I've run out of caring.
Invoking leadership.
No, it's not fair to blame it on Geo. Clearly, that's not what he condones, but I mean, it is what it is. So this is the show.
Did you have a take on the Celestial Theodolite Gatebreaker? Did you have a contention with one of the measurements, one of the predictive methods, one of the nothing?
I'm fully ignorant on it, and I don't claim to know like you guys, so I'm gonna go back on mute.
No worries, man. But yeah, you can try and blame Geo, but like it's not his fault. He can't make me deal with you when there's endless no resolution with when you're just notoriously bad faithing every conversation. Whenever we go to Steelman, your guys' position, we get it right. Whenever we ask you guys our position, it's pretended like we don't have one or that you don't understand it, or you'll be like, so what you're saying is, and it just has nothing to do with what anything was ever said. So if that's your way of interacting with us for the past 22 weeks, we have 20 weeks of it. So the appealing to Geo isn't going to, you're not going to socially shame your way into the conversation, dog. You're out. You walked yourself right out of here.
Associate opponent charges with old news, a derivative of the straw man. Usually in any large-scale matter of high visibility, someone will make charges early on which can be or were already easily dealt with. Does that sound familiar?
This is
Play
a
dumb. No matter what evidence or logical argument is offered, avoid discussing issues except with denials that they have any credibility, make any sense, provide any proof, contain or make a point, have logic, or support a conclusion. Mix well for maximum effect.
Yeah, the classic.
Yeah, and still denying the obvious. You're looking at the obstruction of a light. How can a light that is being obstructed be refracted in the first place?
Yeah, we just went over how he just would pretend that there was no conclusion to things like this, and now that there's a new person, he's like, well, actually, have you heard the thing that I'm going to bank on? They're not hearing me. But no, that's a different mountain with the predictive method being 100% effective. So I don't know, pretending that you haven't addressed it is crazy.
Demand complete solutions. Avoid the issues by requiring opponents to solve the crime at hand completely. A ploy which works best with issues qualifying for Rule 10. Associate opponents with old news. Like it's just a playbook, dude. It's the same thing. Here's another one you're doing.
Make up a
It's
problem.
like we know the height
Crizzle just
of that
basically asked you a
mountain, and we
question.
know the distance to that mountain. So explain that, how you're not, that angle you're getting at that top of that mountain, that's just basic trigonometry of Pythagoras.
How can you just pretend like you answered her or like and move on?
What's
Jesse?
Oh.
So you never listened to it, but you pretended to phrase your response, right, as like a response to Crizzle's statement, and you just went on with your own question.
Yeah. It's like, did you know you were off by 1,600 feet on this mountain that it doesn't apply to, that was already resolved, but because you're new to the conversation, I'm going to try and trick you? Like,
selectivity. They tend to pick and choose opponents carefully, either applying the hit and run approach against mere commentators, supportive opponents, or focusing heavier attacks on key opponents who are known to directly address issues.
I didn't ask.
Jesse, you already had your opportunity, and you screwed it.
I the distance of that height of that mountain is known. The height of that mountain is distance from you to the mountain is known as well. So it's just basic trigonometry of a right triangle. It's Pythagoras. The A and the B equals the C is squared. All the linear. So you're talking about something, and that difference in height is just a difference in topology above sea level. The problem with your stellarium is it uses the center point of your so-called sphere. But that is the same as using the center point of a circle in a flat plane. So that doesn't prove your point, because you have a level plane in your stellarium as well.
Gaslighting? I don't know.
Yeah,
Bingo.
gaslighting the shit out of everybody. That's what.
dude, it makes me so proud that everyone has come together to use the triangle. You guys are crushing.
Nice to see.
If anyone wants the playbook, here you go.
Yeah, dude, Beast, that was awesome. Just read off the tactics 1-to-1 in real time as they transpired. But yeah, so to be clear here, like don't let my censorship be any reflection of Geo, right? He tries to remain neutral for these and let the person doing the hosting handle the moderation. And I've chosen to just not engage with unlimited bad faith now. Like I can't do it anymore. And no matter how that makes it appear to look on the outside to the outside observer, like I'm willing to bear that. Because I watched Witsit meticulously go through hours and hours of trying to show people, the bad faith tactics and stuff. And it's here we are today. So I'm not going to relive that. But if anyone has any questions, like real people that aren't those two people, John and Jesse specifically, we are open for questions, man. But like endless conflict with no resolution is very, it goes through my patience very quickly, and then
Alan, I got you. Ready?
Alan,
artificial emotions, an odd kind of
your story.
Yeah, artificial emotions, an odd kind of artificial. Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry, what were you saying, Crizzy?
My bad, Crizzy.
Anybody who knows the geometry of a XYZ axis and what right triangulation is, they will see your story and they will see through the bullshit.
Dude, that's exactly it. The people that are most familiar with a triangle are the ones that have been like, oh, dude, this is really good, But like it's the lack of understanding the components on which it rests or whatever, you know what I mean? To have that like baseline foundation. And like if people aren't comfortable resting on that, then they're not going to be able to argue it, and then they can just easily get gaslit out of it.
I do have a question, Alan.
What's up, G?
So in this, you know, reality that now you're pointing out how clearly, you know, this is not a globe because of this. I would ask you this. So then, is the measurement to the stars creating a flat um star position, like the scriptures say that he rolled it out like a tent? Is that flat? Because in Revelations he says he's going to roll up the stars like a scroll. So does that mean the stars are flat above us, like they're parallel to the ground, or are we invoking like they are curved around us like a dome? Like that's my question to you.
Yeah, I would say that they're parallel to the ground, but we perceive them in a hemisphere, right? So like the curve that we see is optical, but the implication would be that yeah, they're parallel to the ground as if rotating on like a flat disc above us, one to one, but we
Okay,
perceive it
good
not like
shit.
that.
Good.
Yep.
Perfect. Awesome. I just wanted to ask that because I tend to think that, I mean, if I'm going by the scriptures, he says he's going to roll them up like a scroll, and scrolls would be a flat piece of paper, right? In essence. So yeah. All right. Cool. Thank you for that.
Dope question, Apocryphon. And then I have a comment and then a question, Alan. So my comment is just as an observer watching you guys work on this, you know, the opposition or the anti folks, it's been awesome to see you guys get tighter and tighter with your spreadsheets and with your thinking, making sure you're right, making sure this is working. So that's been really fun. But then my question is, has anybody chimed in from the Southern Hemisphere on how the celestial theodolite is working down there?
Dude, Ricksky, our guy on the inside, was supposed to be doing a little something, but I don't think it panned out. Just immediately
Hey, that'll
start
be
blaming.
fun.
Just immediately start blaming Rick, our Southern Hemi correspondent.
Nice to hear
Yeah, it'll
your
be.
voice.
There's not
Nice to
that
hear your
many
voice, Ron Boston
mountains
Bear.
in Australia.
It was
Yeah,
so
bro. Good
flat when I
hearing.
traveled across it, and then it was
Good hearing
cloudy.
yours too.
For sure. Thank you, by the way. Appreciate that.
Yep. Much love to everybody.
Love you, JC.
Hey Shane, how do I join your Ether Cosmology server?
I'll invite you, big dog.
I'm glad that
Yeah.
Kizzle pointed that out in regards to the XYZ and the triangles, because again, as I stated earlier, like if you can understand that the XYZ, you're taking it from that Y position, and everything apart from that is a planar position. Like as far as the X can go, all the measurements are based upon that. So like, why can't Globers grasp that in all avenues that they try to take? I don't get it. Like, why aren't they grasping that?
They don't want to.
Yeah. I think you're right about
Because
that.
you never concede a major point.
Or any point, actually. And then if you do, just pretend like you didn't.
Well, it has to be a globe because that's what we were told when we were, when we were toddlers, and a deception on that scale just can't be true. So I have to cling to it. And flat earthers are stupid and they don't know anything. And the position is what we see from the anti people. But I'm proud of everybody that's questioned not only cosmology but all the other inversions and deceptions, because waking up to the truth is powerful. And all y'all are lights in the community, and y'all show up and you ask questions and you're inquisitive, and that's in my opinion, that's called being alive and awake. So keep it up.
I think it really goes back to that old, where they're like, you're in your personal dome of vision. I really respect that, because that is our reality. Like when you're talking about something that's, you know, 7,000 miles away from you and it's now lower to the horizon. Yeah, because that is the way you will optically see something. Like it makes sense. It makes perfect sense. I don't know what Globers aren't grasping about that. It's just really weird to me. So I'm glad that Alan, I'm glad you said that, because yeah, you're right. It's the way we perceive this planar, stars going in a circle around us. Like, yeah, you're right, dude. Like that's the way we're gonna visually see them represented. That's our reality. I don't know if
Yep.
Globers aren't getting.
And then they made a map of that in the sky that corresponds to positions on the ground based off of time, and then told us that the shape of the way that we see the sky is also the ground. Classic.
Yeah, it's crazy, bro. Like what? Yeah, I
Yeah.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries. Well, thanks everyone for coming out. I think we could probably wrap this one up. If there's not any measurement questions or anything like that.
I would love it if we actually got like real questions.
Dude, it's hard because from a from the globe perspective, like all questions lead to the implication that it didn't go their way. So
It's almost like it's not the answer they want to be, because it destroys their paradigm. So it can't be that. It's kind of funny, honestly.
I'm asking how you get the distance on a flat Earth given the 2 points. So distances are calculated by units of measurement that are a ratio of the graticule itself. So they're a ratio of the latitude and longitude coordinate system you mentioned there. So computing a distance over a spherical coordinate system isn't an issue for us. And if we were to use the chord of the distances that we're using instead of the arc length, the difference would be 14 centimeters. So we're not like deriving a distance and deriving a distance and using the coordinate system and stuff isn't like, we don't care. It's not an issue for us.
Our prediction only changes by 0.00000015 degrees when we do the difference. Just that's 13 centimeters, right? So it doesn't matter.
Here's the question I wanted to ask too: is are we taking into account that the stars can possibly be in a medium to where they are in water or behind water? Because the scriptures clearly state the waters above and the waters below. So are we also kind of like, that's where that's where this offness, if you will, can be calculated mathematically? Like, that's another question I had for you guys.
Stay out the road, please.
No, there's no way to. No, I don't think. Although, actually, one second. There was this doesn't really show anything either way, but this is a cool video you might like. I'll send you a link to.
All right. Because I personally would like to think that any variance of these mathematical, calculations, like if there is any like deviating from this straight line as they're seeing it, that if it's in a realm or a medium to where there's water in, whether they're in water or behind water, like that's where that gray area can be, because then technically we do see things oddly off position when they are in a medium that naturally would have this, offset, if you will. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Let's see here. I was kind of reading two things at once. I missed most of what you said at the end there.
No worries. I'm just referring to how things in water or behind water will obviously be off a little. So mathematically, if there is any
Sorry. Yes. Sorry. To kind of not answer your question, the calculated position for which they use for reference for everything follows 15 degrees per hour, but what we actually see in the sky doesn't follow that. That's why when they invoke like different astronomical refraction corrections, what they're doing is just basically saying that the reason that this hasn't been blocked by Earth curvature is because it's being lifted up over it, which is the equivalent of making the Earth flat. So the apparent positions that we see, indicate that, but it's been justified on the back end as a refraction mechanism with respect to the true positions. That doesn't really answer your question, but that's a relationship to the math you were talking about and how like the precise it has to be and like what it has to follow. So it's like it follows a conceptual model, and then they have corrections to be like, hey, it's still following our conceptual model when it doesn't.
Right. I feel you. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Just like when a surveyor goes out and they measure something miles and miles away, inaccurately using the equipment that they're supposed to be using it for. Like, it's just they're just hijacking, the way things optically are perceived, and to me that's the reason why they state such false claims, because they're trying to make it fit to comport with their their globe model. So that's the way I see it. Like, they're just fraudulently just trying to make it make sense. But it's just obviously it's just fallacious. That's my opinion. Nice.
Dude, it's crazy. Jesse, you're just literally going by the playbook. Do I deny? Okay, what's that one? Let's see here.
No, he's going from a fallacy playbook, which you're playing by, like, precisely. It's not doesn't mean to imply that he's not human, dude. See, that's another fallacy. You just can't stop, can you?
But you're gonna love the way this guy sounds, Melissa.
Emotionally antagonize. Emotionally goad opponents.
What does it
Well,
mean?
Unrelated, I'm going to post the Greenhorn Mountain predictions for all the methods unrelated to whatever anyone else was saying.
Let's see.
Selectivity. They tend to pick and choose opponents carefully, either applying the hit and run approach against mere commentators supportive of opponents, or focusing heavier attacks on key opponents who are known to directly address issues. Should a commentator become argumentative with any success, the focus will shift to include the commentator as well.
Nice.
Oh, and then the less reaction you have, Jesse, the more I think it's artificial emotions, an odd kind of artificial emotionalism, and an unusually thick skin, an ability to persevere and persist even in the face of overwhelming criticism and unacceptance. This likely stems from intelligence community training that, no matter how condemning the evidence, deny everything and never become emotionally involved or reactive. The net result for a disinfo artist is that emotions can seem artificial. No reaction to that, Jesse. It's weird.
Who was it that's hot micing? Oh, you got that. Thank you.
My pleasure.
Well, Jesse, when you say that it's off in your paradigm, how do you explain when things are off? I'm very interested in what you
It's not even off. Like, that's the crazy part. Is like, this has been
he just says
repeatedly
that, yeah.
addressed, and he just keeps saying that because you don't know that it's not off. Like, isn't that crazy?
And
like,
he
in real
targets you
time,
specifically because he spoke. Yeah, exactly. If he didn't speak, he would do something else.
dude, he can't help it. It's all right, man. All right, we're
I'm like,
yeah.
what is off exactly? Like, what do you mean?
Yeah. On the real though, we're gonna wrap up, lads. Much appreciated. We will probably take a little breaky break here until we get some new data or something to go over, some different aspects of things to go over. So then we might take a week off or so to get some more stuff gathered up for you guys. But yeah, I just wanted today to be a rehash of events transpired since we got all the notation stuff up. We got the spreadsheets live. So now people that want to get interested in it can read the spreadsheet. They can read the notation guide, figure out what we're talking about, and it won't be a mystery. We're giving out the Rosetta Stone or whatever they say to make it easy. So hopefully some people start taking a closer look at it. I think we were supposed to hear back from a young Bacon, and I think Professor Parks was saying that he was taking a look at some stuff on the occlusion timings and whatnot. So hopefully we'll have some more interesting things to come back with and talk about. But we will see you guys on the next one. Mike, was there anything you wanted to close us out on, sir?
Nope, I don't have anything special. For weeks now, I've been working on a mathematical guide to the topology, and I'm not sure that's quite where I want it to be yet, but I will go ahead and in the live stream text anyway. You've seen it, Alan, so I don't think there's anything like horribly wrong. It doesn't necessarily convey everything I'd like to convey the way I'd like to, but it's it definitely defeats the uh, erroneous comment that nobody has ever told anybody how to calculate things.
Yeah. Is that the document that you were showing me where they do the double the drop over distance thing?
Yes, it's that document.
Ah,
So
nice. Okay.
do you have any problems with that? You haven't told me yet?
No, I still Brian's better understanding it, so I'm leaning on him to convey to me the geometric implications of it. So as he explains it, I'll understand it better, hopefully. But yeah, if not, maybe next week or the week after we can do it. We can do a thing just on that specifically, because that's an extremely important concept to understand. It's like it shouldn't work, but doing it makes it work for them, not us. And it's like, what happened? Like, why is that? Because geometrically, the way that you're adding it shouldn't be applicable, right?
Yep, and even among themselves, they argue it shouldn't work, but it obviously that's exactly what they need to make their argument work. It's all invalid, of course, but that explains why they're doing things in the weird way that they are. But I'll just hold off a little more sharing it with the entire group until I get some more feedback from critics that have had time to look at it really closely.
Nice. Awesome. All right. Well, there we have it, folks. Potential update for the following weeks. See you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everyone.
Have a good night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for hosting, Gio. Peace.
Yeah. Thank you, Gio. Much appreciated, man.
Yep, for sure. Yep. Cheers, guys.
I would like to point out for those that are posting graphs such as Chief Squatting Dog.
All right, lads and ladettes, let's take a look at the chat here, see what the gang's been up to here. We got Bogan. Shout out to your boy, bss.org. Very cool. Are we learning about black hat debate ops? We are. Got Run Boston Bear. Shout out to the homie, the president. Nominal. Shout out to you, and thank you so much for the subscription. The support means a lot. Stephen Shuck, shout out to your boy. Down there, we got a spam bot and Twitch chat. Grassy Reorganization. Shout out to you, chat bot. We got Daniel McLaughlin. Yo, what up, lads? What up to you, good sir? Got Leland. Shout out to Leland in the chat, always spreading love, exuberance amounts of love and joy, to a point that it makes me feel uncomfortable. But CY, otherwise known as shout out to your boy. We got a tip from Shalom Shire Farms. Shout out to your boy. Thank you so much. And let's see here. I think we are Tony Coriolis in the house. There's your boy, the only Coriolis force I've ever measured. And we got a press down there. Love you guys. Thanks to press. Or Espress, sorry. And we got Chili Shots Orbitus. What's the subject? Blue smiling face emoji. The subject was the Celestial Theody, and we went over bad faith debate tactics. All right, we'll see you guys tomorrow for Ether Roundtable number 102, where Paul Plain Reality is going to come on and do a little guest prezi for us about refraction. He's got tons of new observations, diagrams, and a whole new prezi, so we're looking forward to that. Now, tomorrow night, we'll be starting a little later than usual. We'll be starting at 9 p.m. instead of 8 p.m. to make accommodations for our Australian friends that are not on Real People time. Apparently, this dude's a day ahead of us or something, so he's on a completely different day. So we'll see that on Tuesday, our Tuesday, his Wednesday. And then Friday, we'll see what the Twitter gang is up to. And then we'll be back to Globebusters on Sunday for a presentation from Shane, where he's going to be going over the histories of dams. Peace.